Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us on what should be the most important webinar you're going to view this year. I'm here to show you the #1 single best lead generation tool for you and your business, bar none, that will have you stand out so completely from your competition. It'll transform your business and create absolutely massive growth in it, more than any other strategy out there. I know that sounds like a big claim, but I'm going to show you plenty of proof to show you how this was worked. It's worked for all of the biggest names you know in business, but it's also working for lots of ordinary business owners like yourself. And I'm going to show you examples of how you can apply this yourself, give you as much information as I possibly can. And look, it doesn't matter what business you're in, if it's service or goods or purely online business. Even if you're just an online influencer, this is going to work for you. And it is the single most important strategy that you can implement in your business. And I know that sounds like a big claim. I'm sure you've heard others make similar claims about other products or services. But look, as you're going to find out over this webinar, this claim is not only true, but completely verifiable. And I'm going to show you plenty of examples that you can go and check out yourself, okay? It is undoubtedly the #1 strategy that works better than anything else. And that's why I'm so excited to be sharing this with you today. So I'm your host, Andrew Carter, and I'm going to go through this rather quickly, so I'll leave the questions to the end. Just put them in the chat box and we can talk about them at the very end. There is no big sales pitch in any of this. I just want to give you as much information as I can in the time we've got available. At the end, though, I will mention an event I'm running later on for those who want to know more information, okay? So look, this tool and strategy is very well used and proven by all of the greats, like I said before. Let me share my screen and we'll get into this. This tool, this strategy that I want to talk about, it's been used and proven by all of the greats in business. People like Tony Robbins, Russell Brunson, Robert Kiyosaki, Deepak Chopra. The list goes on and on and on. But as I say, not just all the biggest names in business you know have done this. It's now being used by thousands of other business owners, and it's working for them. And as I say, I will show you plenty of examples throughout this tutorial so you can see how to apply it to you or your business, all right? The question I have for you is, what is it that made these guys the go-to expert or authority in your eyes? You see, to be seen as the authority, believe it or not, first, and I do stress first, they became an author. Now, I ask you to stay with me. People want to tune out at this stage. They think that, being an author is way too hard. It'll take way too long. It can't help their business, especially if they're purely online. They've seen their friends do it and it hasn't worked for them. Or they may have tried it themselves and it hasn't worked. And I understand that. We're going to cover the reasons why very, very quickly. But I assure you that you can do this. It can be done very quickly in less than half a day, even if you can't type or write. And we're not talking about using ChatGPT. It is the single greatest strategy to gain people's attention, build trust and credibility, and drive them to your website. And I'm going to explain all of that during this webinar. All right. Now, I'm aware that more and more people are trying to do this and not having success, and that's because they're not doing it correctly. And that's not necessarily their fault, as there's lots of people out there now claiming they can show you how to do this without having all the knowledge and insider secrets and the track record my company's had for over 15 years now. And if you don't get all of the elements correct, if you've got one missing piece of the puzzle, this doesn't work. But it is surprisingly easy to do this and to do it correctly and reap huge benefits from it. So let's have a look at this. When we talk about those greats, when I was talking about the three big names there, you think that they became an expert and then wrote the book. But that's not the case. In each case, and not just for those ones, I've met so many successful people here and overseas, and every time I sit down and talk to them about their success, they actually wrote the book first, and as a result of doing that, they were perceived as the expert, and then that's what allowed them to get the notoriety and go on to build the business the way that they have. I know that sounds ass backwards, but this is what works. So as I said to you, the reason it's not working for others is because of common mistakes or because of some misconceptions you may have about this process. So let me just cover those quickly. And the first one is that you don't need a book. It can't help you. I'm going to show you exactly how it does. It's going to make you stand out. It elevates you above your competition, all right? How many of your competitors, you're all doing the same thing, right? You're all in the same space, probably all doing the same thing at the same price. So how are you going to differentiate yourself? How are you going to stand out and get noticed? That's what a book does. It also builds trust and credibility. The people who stand out and get noticed and move on and make big money are the ones that do have a book, that a credibility builder like that. I'll talk more about that in detail. Most people I come across will tell me a book would never work in their industry. My company's been doing this for 16 years. We've been teaching it for 15 years. There is not an industry I haven't come across that we can't help. More than that, we've also done it with a lot of hobbies, turned a lot of hobbies into 6 and even 7-figure income through a book. I'm going to show you some examples of that. I don't know enough to complete a book. This is the next most common one I hear all the time. You can look her up, Emily Shea. She wrote her first book at 11 years old. The first printer run of that, she made $20,000. Now, I'm going to say to you, if an 11-year-old can write a book, you certainly could. If she's got enough knowledge or info to create one, you certainly can. I do not have enough expertise to make one. That's why I just showed you the last slide. All of those big names, they actually wrote the book first, and that was what led people to perceive them as the expert. All right? I'm going to cover this in more detail now. No one reads physical books anymore. Since about 2007, 2008, we saw the real rise of ebooks, and everyone was saying that the demise of paper was coming shortly. And that did. We saw a real rise in that till about 2011. Here's the thing, though. Since 2011, physical book sales year on year have increased, meaning that more books are being produced and read now than at any other time in history. People actually want physical books. Yes, ebooks still have a strong demand. What I'm saying is we're going to produce a physical book first. I'm going to show you quick and easy ways to do that and how to get that into bookstores and build your credibility. Then from that physical book, you can still create the ebook, and that's what you can get up on online platforms. But an ebook itself is not going to get you the credibility. We'll talk about that more. More books are being produced and read now than at any other time in history, okay? I do not have time to create a book. Yep, that's understandable. I'm going to show you how to do it in less than 3 hours. There's no money to be made from the sales of a book. I agree with that, especially in Australia, incredibly difficult. What I'm going to show you is how to make money on the front end and the back end of your book, and how to produce far more business that you're currently doing from your book. And when I say making money on the front end, I'm talking about tens of thousands of dollars before your book is even printed. And so the classic example is this one here, my latest book, Authority Influencer Marketing Made Simple. That book generated $40,000 before it even went to print. So we're going to talk about that in some detail. The major mistakes I see a lot of people do, I'll go to a lot of expos, or I deal with a lot of business owners who say, well, I've tried this, it didn't work for me. Well, what did you do? Well, a lot of them got together with 10 of their mates. They wrote a chapter each. They put together a compilation book. I'm going to show you how a compilation book works very, very well and establishes your authority and expertise if you do it with other experts, not with your mates. All right, it's a common mistake I see a lot of people do. Self-publishing, yep, good way to go, but when you're trying to get this credibility, you need to be able to get into bookstores. That's what's really going to get you the credibility as far as the media is concerned. And free media and PR is a big part of why we want to do this. I'm going to show you plenty of examples. A lot of people who self-publish do make a lot of common mistakes, and that won't allow you to get them into bookstores. You can't get a distribution agreement if you're self-published usually. So what are you going to do? Pod, print on demand, is the next common one now. We see a lot of people in this space trying to sell people on the idea, oh, look, do my system, learn how to do this, and then all you need to do is print on demand. You can get a certain number of books printed. So if you're going to do a seminar or something, 30 people are turning up, you can just get 30 books printed. Yep, you can do that. It's an expensive way to do it. And is that building your credibility? If I go into a bookstore to ask about you, am I going to find your book? No, of course not. Even though you've told me you're an author. Trust and credibility is what this exercise is all about. These are the common mistakes I see. People writing just an ebook, or they're just going to put it up on Amazon. Why? How does that build your authority? Oh, well, I'm going to become an Amazon bestseller. No, believe it or not, that title means absolutely nothing. My company, as a percentage of authors published, has produced the highest number of best-selling authors in Australia. genuine, bona fide, best-selling authors. And we do that through a system and the knowledge that we have and the way that we create this. We get every element correct, all right? Do you want to know how many books you have to sell on Amazon to become a bestseller? As little as 3. I can explain an entire system. If you know what to do and how to work the system with Amazon, you can actually become a bestseller within just a few minutes and as little as 3 sales of your book. Now, that's great for your ego. If you got the Amazon bestseller title and you can go around telling your family how good you are because you're an Amazon bestseller, but if you've only sold 3, 5, 10 books, is that really helping your business? Is that really promoting you to a larger audience? And is that building your trust and credibility? Of course not. And in the publishing circles, it actually reduces your credibility because it means nothing. And this is the problem. What I find with most people who've never succeeded at this, they don't have a formal way of distributing their books. You do need to get your books into bookstores. I'll be the first to admit, if you're doing everything right, the highest number of your sales of books won't come from bookstores, but they do need to be in bookstores to give you that authority status and that credibility that we're trying to build for you. And this is very, very common. I see it far too often where people just can't get their books. I'll show you the next slide. The next slide makes far more sense. Using ChatGPT. Look, ChatGPT is an amazing tool. It's got a huge future ahead of it. At this stage, it's simply not good enough for writing a book. Even though there's a book plugin for it, I have used it. I'm telling you, compared to what I'm going to show you today, it's an incredible, difficult, clunky, long way to do something relatively simple. And of course, ChatGPT doesn't know you. It's important that when you're writing a book, it's in your words and it's about your experience, because that's what's going to build the trust, the bond, the connection between you and the reader. ChatGPT simply can't do that. So let's look about this distribution issue, because I want you to realize that 98% of all authors published in Australia give away or sell less than 200 copies of their printed book. Less than 200 copies. Here's the really sad part of that statistic. More than half of that 98% actually sell or give away less than 100 copies. So what makes the other 2% so successful? And this is what we're here to talk about today. What I'm talking to you about today is establishing yourself as an expert in your industry. This is incredibly important, right? You need to be seen as the authority. When people perceive you as a go-to authority or expert in a certain field, they actively pursue you to purchase your products, services, and advice, and in fact pay more for it. And you know this to be true because you've done it. You do this yourself. How many times have you been bitten or burnt, or, you've bought cheap, had to buy twice? You actually want to find the best in that field. You want to, if you're trying to build your business or, do something you want to learn in life, you always want to learn from the authority, not from the hack, okay? It's really important. Look, selling is easy, okay? To sell your products or services is really only 2 things you've got to do. You've got to be able to gain attention. If you can't gain attention, how do people know about you? How do you stand out from amongst your competition? How do you make people realize that they should come to you? Okay. Far too many people think that just by setting up a website or placing an ad or posting on social media or YouTube, they're going to capture people's attention and make lots of sales. And look, a long time ago, you probably could. However, these days, both online and offline, the market is saturated. So when you do any of those things today, you just become another Me Too business, another one of millions all doing the same thing. So you're going to have to do something that will really make you stand out from the crowd and something that will attract people's attention. Now, once you've got their attention, the next biggest problem or barrier to business is building trust. People are reluctant to purchase goods or services because of a lack of trust. We've all been burnt before. None of us wish to be so again. So trust becomes the single biggest barrier to making a sale after you've gained a prospect's attention. People only like to buy from people they trust, and building that trust can usually take a very, very long time. Those of you using sales funnels know that, it used to require you giving something away to a potential customer for free, and so that they could try it. You had to interact with them at least 7 times before they trusted you enough to purchase from you. Well, that was then. These days, they're saying it's now about 21 interactions you've got to have with someone before they can trust you. What I'm saying to you is a book does away with all of that, all right? A book about you and your business is the best way to gain attention and build massive trust and credibility. And after having built multiple businesses, after having done not-for-profits, after having been a coach and a mentor, of all of the things I've seen and done, I'm telling you, there is simply nothing else like a book to do this for you. If you want to gain attention, build trust and credibility, this is what you need to do. Why? Well, being an author ranks in the top 10% of professions in terms of prestige. This is a Newsweek quote. Newsweek went and did a whole lot of research on this over an extensive period of time, and this is how people perceive authors, okay? When we're talking in terms of prestige, we're talking about authors and rock stars and, you know, lawyers and pilots and things like that. In terms of prestige, an author ranks in the top 10% of the professions that do that. Why? Well, authors are highly respected. They always have been. When you are the author of a book, it is automatically assumed that you are an expert in your field. Going back to that first slide, that's how these guys got started. I know it sounds ass backwards, but by writing the book first, that's what established them as the expert. But if you've got a book out there, you don't need to go around telling people you're an expert or that you're credible. The book will do that for you. The book actually acts as a third-party independent advocate of you and your business. Now, it's going to be the book is written for a specific audience, okay? You need to know who your ideal client is, who your tribe is. The book will position you as number one in your customers' minds. This is another thing people tend to get hung up on. A lot of people say, oh, well, I'm not the expert, or I'm not the best person in this field. Well, no, but is the best person in this field even in this country? If you can craft the message that it's what your ideal customer wants to hear, and you can build that bond, that trust, that connection, they're going to want to come and speak to you. They're going to want to deal with you. Now, as I said to you earlier on, the book has to be an actual physical book, printed and published. And if you haven't actually got it in all bookstores, it needs to be available through bookstores. You need people to be able to go up to the counter and say, oh, have you got this book by Andrew Carter? And they should be able to look it up and say, no, we haven't got it in stock at the moment, but we can get it in. Because that's what's going to build your credibility, all right? Knowing that you're an actual author in an actual bookstore. And this is what the media looks for. You're going to generate a lot of free media and PR from all of this. And the way to do it is by having the book in the bookstores and letting them know about it. You can't gain any real credibility with just an ebook. You're not going to get noticed. And the example I like to demonstrate to this is think about any interview show you've ever seen, any talk show, morning or late night. And, you know, they say, and our next guest is Andrew Carter, author of Authority, Influencer Marketing Made Simple. And they hold it up to the camera, don't they? Or they put it down on the desk and the camera zooms in on it. But that's how they introduce you. Have you ever seen anyone say, and now here's Andrew Carter, author of such and such ebook? What are they going to hold up? The ebook alone, we're talking here about purely getting you noticed and building credibility. Ebooks alone do have a place, and I can show you how to use that as a very powerful tool. But when we're talking about building your trust and credibility and gaining attention and positioning you above your competition, it has to be a physical book. So regardless of what business you're in, you need a physical book to create your credibility and personal brand awareness, to grab attention and be seen as the expert. And then you use that attention to drive traffic to your online site. So this is a much more powerful way to market, all right? People still think, oh, well, I'm just doing all my marketing online. I'm using Facebook ads. That's great, but how are you standing out amongst that? You will if you've got a book and you can hold the book up and start talking about that. But what I'm saying is you're actually marketing offline with a physical book. And let's face it, that's where most of us live. You work, live, sleep, eat, travel in the real world. And so using a physical book in that real world, you gain attention and then you drive those people to your online site. Being an author, when someone reads your book, you have their complete attention for a couple of hours. I understand that may not be all uninterrupted. They may take a phone call or go get a cup of coffee or something, but you think about this. What other marketing tool allows you to gain people's attention for a couple of hours and be grateful that they've done it? So as an author, you're able to spend many hours with a person, one-on-one, building credibility and trust, positioning yourself as the authority and the go-to expert without ever leaving the comfort of your home, without ever having to pick up a phone and cold call people, without ever having to go out and network. It is the ultimate form of leveraging your time. Your book builds trust and credibility, positions you as the expert, leverages your time, and will actually gain access to clients you may not have otherwise been able to reach. And this is very common and something I'll talk about later. So let's quickly try and bust some of the myths or some of the mental limitations you probably have about writing a book. And of course, the first one is that it takes a long time to write a book. I say no. We're going to show you how to do it. I'm going to do it right now. I want to show you exactly how to complete a book in just a few hours. And it's actually quite simple. A lot of people overthink this, and I don't want you to overthink it. What information is it you want to give to the reader of your book? Who is your ideal customer or client? Like, who is your target audience? And when you understand them, when you understand exactly who it is you're trying to attract, you know what message you want to tell them, all right? And it's really quite simple because you know how your book should begin. You know the introduction. You're going to start by introducing yourself, and telling people why they need to read this book. The end of the book is the conclusion is you want them to take action. You actually want them to visit your website or, download a freebie or book a call or whatever it's going to be. So you know the beginning and the end. Now what I want you to do is just pick up an A4 sheet of paper or multiple A4 sheets of paper, and at the top of each one, I just want you to write down the name of the step. So there's going to be a number of steps to get from intro to end. Write down each of those steps, and then under those steps, I want you to write down some bullet points. What do you need to cover to logically lead from the one step to the next step? Those steps have now become your chapter headings. And so all you need to do is pick up your computer or your phone or your tablet, hit record, and literally read out that step, that chapter heading, and then start talking to the bullet points underneath it. It really is that simple. Now, the whole thing here is I'm talking about non-fiction books, right? We're talking about books that are going to help you in your business. So these are what we call how-to type books. We found now you don't want to exceed 150 pages. We know statistically, following the sales and trends both here and overseas, anything more than 150 pages is starting to become hard work for people in this space. They want the information, they want it quickly, and we're not giving everything we know away in one book. We're giving them enough to get them to build trust and credibility for you, get them to take action, and start the interaction from there. So if it's more than 180 pages, we find the book sales drop right off. If it's more than 150 pages, fewer people actually read it. Or finish reading it. We want them to finish reading it. We want them to get to the end and take action. So 150 pages is the magic number. Now, 150 pages equates to 30,000 words. And if you go by the normal rate of speech, which is slightly slower than what I'm speaking now, but I've got a lot to get through, 30,000 words at about 180 words per minute, the normal rate of speech, comes out to 2 hours and 47 minutes of talking. That's it. All right. Now, it's only a rough draft. I'm not saying that's going to be a completed manuscript, but you have got all of the content for your book done in just less than 3 hours. Yes, you're going to have to go through and tidy it up, and you're going to have to get rid of the ums and ahs, and you may have found you doubled up on a couple of things, or you might have missed a thought out. So there's probably a little bit more work to go into it, but not much. We've just saved ourselves weeks, if not months, of sitting at a keyboard and typing things out. And you tend to think quite clearly when you're talking. You tend to be able to explain a lot better than you would if you were to sit down, start typing, stop, correct yourself, have to think about what it was you're trying to say, try and think of a better way to say it. And when you talk, you are very conversational. The best-selling books are conversational type books. They're ones where I sit down and I believe I'm getting to know the author. I'm getting to know the author's voice. I'm getting to know the author in their words. And this is why ChatGPT doesn't work. It can't do the book in your words. And your words are all important, okay? There's a reason why she's holding a dictaphone there, not a smartphone. I'll come to that shortly. In fact, well, the whole point is because my first book, Rhino Retail, is done over 15 years ago. I actually recorded that in my car, believe it or not. So I did the exact system I've just described to you. And whenever I stopped at a traffic light, I'd pick up a dictaphone. I'd start talking through the bullet points, stop when the light went green, and continued to do that. Within 1 week, I had finished the manuscript for that book. Now, you can use an audio to text transcription app for efficiency, or you can have someone transcribe it for you. Don't have anyone transcribe it for you. These days, it's not required. If you've got Microsoft Word, just use Word. You can hit dictate, and as you're talking like I'm talking now, it will start writing in Word for you, okay? It's brilliant. What I use is otter.ai. You can actually download a free version of this and try it yourself. I think it's good for about 8,000 or 10,000 words, so you could get a third of a book written. I find it really good because it records the audio and it transcribes it, and then you can download it in multiple formats. I just download it in Word and then tidy it up. That's how quickly it can be done. The reason we had the woman with the dictaphone was because of my book and also because of this guy. This is Ian Marsh. This is a classic example. He created all of the content for this book in half a day using that system, just talking into a dictaphone. Now, his end result was he wanted to attract a high-end client and he wanted to sell them into a high-price ticket item. And so that's all the book was designed to do. And Ian has told me that that has generated for him over $600,000. So think about that. He's created a book without ever having picked up a pen, without ever having touched a keyboard. He just talked into a dictaphone, had someone transcribe it for him, and it's gone on to make over $600,000. So you can create the content for your book in just a few hours without having to write or type or use ChatGPT. This is exciting stuff, and this is how quick and easy it should be for you to do it. Another myth is you need to have a university education or a degree to be taken seriously as an author. No, you do not. And the method I've just shown you will work for anybody. So even if you don't understand the language well enough to write, you don't need a university education. I like to include this guy. Some of you may know him, Dr. John Gray. Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, one of the best-selling books of all time. Yes, he calls himself Dr. John Gray. He's got the PhD, but guess what? He didn't when he wrote the book. When he wrote the book, he'd just stopped being a monk. He used to be a monk of all things, right? And he stopped. He was on dates with women. Of course, he didn't understand women because he'd lived in a monastery with other men and didn't get the whole thing. Talking to women, he got an appreciation. And so all he did is he put his experience into a book. Now, he used large sections of that book as a thesis. And so he provided that to university, and afterwards he got his PhD. All right, but you do not need one to write a book. This is a real common one. We have a lot of people approach us about. It's not an issue for us. Oh, I don't want to go and write a book and print and be left with a garage full of books. And believe it or not, this is the problem I come across with so many times when I find business owners who've run off and done this themselves. They think they know what they're doing, or they've followed someone else's advice who had no idea how to complete this process properly. Yep, I understand. You don't want to be left with something like that. That young lady has a big smile on her face. That's Sharon, one of our authors. She's smiling because all those books have been pre-sold, right? You can avoid this situation by proper marketing of your book before, during, and after it is published. And I can show you how to do that. Books don't make any money. The sale of the books doesn't make very much money. That is very true if you're using a traditional publisher. A traditional publisher is only going to give you a small percentage of the cover price, like 3 to 5% of the cover price. You don't get to dictate the cover price or even how the cover looks. The publisher will do all of that. And it's not a very successful model. So that's why a lot of people went into self-publishing, because they can make a lot more per book, but you sell a lot less books. So overall, you end up actually making less money. And so that's where entrepreneurial publishing came about this century. It allows you to make large amounts of money before your book is even published. As I said to you, $40,000 in my case, but we've had authors make $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 before the book is even published. But they make a lot more once it is, and we're going to talk about that during this call. And one of those tips to make more money is just to sell advertising in your book. This is the really successful way to make money on the front end. So as I said, I've done it with that Authority Influencer Marketing book. This is one of our other authors, Sharon Jerd, How to Grow Your Business Faster Than Your Competitors. She made somewhere around $70,000 just by selling advertising in the front of her book. Okay, very simple process, very easy to do. There's a script around it. There's a reason for it. And it basically, an ad in a book is far more successful than in a magazine or on television or anywhere like that. One, because it's aimed directly at your ideal target market. And two, it doesn't come across as an ad. It comes across as a recommendation from an authority, from the expert, from the author. Right? The book has to be about you. This is another myth that I come across. A lot of people say, oh, I can't do a book because, it has to be about me and I've got nothing to say or nothing to do. This is where compilation books work really, really well. I'm going to show an example of that in a second. If you do a compilation book properly, and very, very, very few people do them properly, but if you do it properly, you get what's called the halo effect. You as the author get some credibility and some prestige for having interviewed or compiled interviews with other famous or successful people. And that's the story. It needs to be with famous or successful or well-known people, not with you and your mates. This is the biggest problem with compilation books. 10 of you getting together, submitting a chapter each and thinking you're going to take on the world? No. But if you were to write a book about a whole lot of famous people and have them included in your book, by transference, you will accept some of their credibility. So this is the classic example I like to show. This is Top Franchise CEO Secrets Revealed, written by Darren Stevens, who was not a top franchise CEO himself. In fact, he wasn't even a franchise CEO. He was just trying to introduce a new franchise to Australia. Now, I'm talking about being able to stand out amongst your competition. I'm talking about building your trust and credibility, getting noticed. So the way he did it is he went and interviewed all of the top franchise CEOs and positioned himself amongst them. So you've got people like Janine Ellis from Boost Juice, which I think most people would know. You've got other franchises that you may not know who the CEOs are, but you know the companies: Clark Rubber, La Paqueta Pizza, Leonard's Poultry, Harehouse Warehouse, companies like this. And so what he did is he got each of them to write a chapter for his book. And by being the author of that book, he automatically assumed some credibility and prestige. Why would these top CEOs talk to him unless he was an expert in that field? This is how people think. It's their perception that matters here, okay? Where he was really clever is he also slotted himself and his new franchise in amongst them. So when you come to it and you go, well, I don't know who this guy is, but I know who all these other brands are. If he's included with all these other brands, he must be successful too. And so that led to huge success for his franchise. But let's look at the money that can be generated from a book like this if you know what you're doing. And the money I'm going to show that was generated was all done before the book was printed. And this is what I'm saying. If you know what you're doing and you do it properly, there's a hell of a lot of money that can be made from this. And the real benefit of a compilation book is the contributors all have outlets. Obviously, all of these franchises, they've got stores all around Australia. And so in this case, if you get them to pre-purchase copies, they can actually distribute it through their stores. So not just through bookstores, you've got it through physical other stores as well. So let's have a look at the money that was made in just 2 weeks. And this is fascinating because what he did is when he approached those CEOs, he said to them, look, what we're doing is we're putting together this book. Only the top CEOs or top companies in Australia are going to make it into it. If you're trying to sell more franchises, you need to get noticed. You need attention. So what we're going to do is help promote your business. You will actually sell more franchises as a result of this. And all I'm asking from you is that, one, you provide a chapter. I'll send you the questions that I want you to answer, and you write a chapter around those questions. You provide the image and the logo that you want included in the book. And 3, that you pre-purchase 1,000 copies. I'm going to give them to you at a highly discounted rate, and you can do whatever you want to them. You can give them out to potential franchisees. You can sell them in stores. You can make all your money back plus some. You can do whatever you want with them. And so this is what he did, right? From a book that retails for $29.95 each, he had 14 contributors, and each of them paid $9.95 for 1,000 books. So that came to $139,300. Then, as I said to you about selling advertising space, he went and found advertisers in that industry who want to be promoted in that book. and he gave them a deal. He said, well, all I ask is that you pre-purchase 500 books at half price. You can then turn around and sell them at full retail price, in which case you'll make all of your money back plus that much again, or you can give them away as free independent advertising of your business, whatever you want to do. Now, look at it from their point of view, from both the contributors and the advertisers. This is an amazing deal. Absolutely incredible, because they would normally budget that sort of money anyway for advertising, but it's shotgun advertising. It's going out to the masses, and they have no understanding of what the result of that might be or how influential that may be. And they're not actually getting anything for it other than exposure to the masses. This is giving them exposure to the masses, but it's also giving them a physical product which they can then use or sell and make their money back. So this is an incredibly powerful tool, and it's a genuine win-win situation, which is what we're always trying to promote. So from the advertising, he's made another $112,000. So if you add that up, in less than 2 weeks, he's generated over $250,000 for a product that doesn't even exist yet. Now, of course, you've got to take expenses away from that. So less the cost of the production of the 21,500 books, his total in profits was almost $144,000. Now, I need to put this in perspective, because most small businesses in Australia are not even making $144,000 profit in a year, and he's made this in 2 weeks with a product that hasn't even been developed yet. More importantly, from my point of view, that's 21,500 books sold, which makes him an instant bestseller. Not an Amazon bestseller. This is a genuine bona fide bestseller. And what that means is you've already created notoriety around this. So you've already built your credibility and prestige as an author, and bookstores want to sell best-selling books because by definitions, they're the ones that sell best. So there's a lot of free media and PR that comes about from having a book that's automatically a bestseller. And then more and more bookstores are going to pre-order this book before it comes out because they know of its success and they want to be selling it. So it becomes self-fulfilling. Can you do this? Yes, you most certainly can. How do I know you can? Because this is Pete Burden, one of our authors who'd written another book with us. He saw the example I've just shown you and said, well, why can't I do that? Why can't I copy that and do it in my home country? Well, you can. There is absolutely nothing to stop you. So you can see he went off and did exactly the same thing. In fact, the layout is virtually the same. Inside is exactly the same. But he's just interviewed franchise CEOs in New Zealand, and this is the book. Now, this book, doing exactly the same thing, generated Pete $120,000 before it was even published. And as you can imagine, it's only gone on to produce a hell of a lot more since then. So what I'm showing you throughout these are not one-off examples. These are easily repeatable. Once the system is right, you can just keep recreating it. So there is a hell of a lot of money in books if you know what you are doing. No, you'll never get rich just from the sale of books themselves. But if you know how to work the front end and the back end of a book, there's a hell of a lot of money in it. And one of the people we like to talk about, he speaks quite often at our events, Conrad Bobolak, classic example. He attended one of our events with no idea, no clients, no business. He didn't even have a business name, yet alone premises or anything like that, right? And during the workshop, he started to craft his idea of a book around the game behind the game, which is something we promote heavily. I don't have time to talk about it now. And he went on to complete a book which has become a genuine bestseller. It is a genuine Amazon bestseller too. If you look it up, his 2 books are normally #1 and #2 on Amazon. But the reason that's different is because they're #1 or #2 on Amazon every day of every week of every year for year after year after year after year. He went one stage further. He then created a website and a YouTube channel around the book, the book will attract his client, but the ideal client, but it'll also attract a lot that aren't, a lot of time wasters. So the YouTube channel and the website are actually designed to get rid of the rejects. So you're only attracting prospects, not rejects. Don't waste your time on them. And the book has allowed him to create a company from scratch, which is now paying him $1 million a year. It has been for many, many years, okay? Now, why does he know that this works? Because he has been generous enough and that he has actually given his entire system to 2 mates in the same industry. Conrad cannot handle all of the work that he currently has. This is an issue for him. So what he's done is he's got some mates who are in exactly the same industry, exactly the same position. and he gave them everything. He gave them his accountant, his lawyers, he gave them all of his paperwork, all of his systems, all of his advertising, showed him how to set up the YouTube channel. He got the same website created to build the same sort of website for him. And let's say there's 20 steps, I don't know, but he gave them step 1 to 20. And for whatever reason, they followed step 2 to 20 and went broke. So Conrad earns $1 million a year from this strategy, and his mates make zero. In fact, his mates have gone back to working for someone else. So what's the one difference? They don't have a book. They didn't do step 1, and Conrad can't explain why. Whether they just didn't understand it or they weren't interested in doing it, they did everything the same as Conrad, but they did not have a book. They did not have that thing that makes them stand out amongst all of the other people in that same field, and they did not have the one tool that's going to build trust and credibility amongst all others. How successful is this for Conrad? People finish reading his book on a flight across the country or internationally. They get to the other end and they literally just pick up the phone and they will do multi-million-dollar deals with him over the phone without ever having met him, all because of the trust and credibility that book gives him. That is the power of a book, and that's why we're running this webinar, to really impress this upon you. Back-end products. So we've talked about how to make a lot of money on the front end. Back-end products, the book will do 2 things. One, it will get you noticed. It'll build your trust and credibility, and so it'll drive a lot more customers or clients to your already established business. So you're going to make more money that way. But if you know what you're doing, you can actually build back-end products, other products from the content of your book, and sell them to the people who've read your book and want more from you. And this is the thing a lot of people don't understand. People who've read your book and have built that bond and connection and that trust, they do want more from you. Okay, so have more to give them. We talk about only producing a 150-page book and why you should do that. For those people wanting extra information, you have that listed on your website, and in the book, you actively are driving them to your website to get that information. And of course, on your website, they'll have to input their name and email to get access to that information. And now you're creating a list. This is a list of hot buyers, people who've read your book, they trust you now, and they're far more likely to buy from you with any other offering you come up with now. So look, it doesn't matter whether you're an online or offline business, your book will make you stand out, gain massive credibility, and grow your business exponentially. The entire time leaving you so far out ahead of your competition that they actually become totally irrelevant. So let's have a look at a couple of quick examples here, just to give you an idea of the sort of industries this has worked in. Jason Smith, he was in physiotherapy, created one of the most successful franchise brands in that field, Back in Motion. This was the book he wrote that got him established above everyone else. This took him to a whole new level and allowed him to sell far more franchises, to the point that he was able to sell out at a very, very high price, about $125 million, I think he ended up selling the business for. Katrina Francois, so this is a naturopath, and of course she had a bricks and mortar business and was very limited in what she could do with the bricks and mortar business. Business was struggling. Writing this book got her noticed. I'm going to show you the sort of media that generated for her and some of the back-end products she had as a result of that. But what it did is, because it's positioned her as the expert, people now not just in town are coming to see her, people are traveling vast distances to come and see her because she is positioned as the expert. The savvy shopaholic, Joe Monroe, this is the classic example of what I'm trying to explain to people. You know, when I'm saying, people say, oh, I'm not an expert. Well, most of us would consider ourselves an expert on shopping, but only Joe went and wrote a book about it. And as a result, she has got so much media, so much free press, and so many opportunities, and has made so much money from this, you've got no idea. It'll work in any sort of hobby or interest. I'm going to cover that shortly. So let's just have a look. This is Karina Francois, the naturopath I was just talking about. She got all of this free exposure in all of these magazines just because her book came out. And so she hasn't had to create any of this content. She can just lift little bits from her book or other people who've written about her. And as a result, she's been positioned as the expert. So one magazine got her to become their regular consultant. What do you think that's done for her business? So I'm talking about back-end products, and Karina Francois had to develop one. She's only a brick and mortar business, so she can only do business with those who come to her. what she was able to do was develop her own herbal tea, which sells around the world. Now, she didn't actually develop it. It's out there. It's what's called a white label product. You just put your name on it and they drop ship it for you. And that's exactly what happened. And this now sells around the world. It's an entire different income stream for her. All right, Jo Monroe, as I said to you, she's made hundreds of television appearances. She's been incredibly successful. She gets a lot of products given to her. She's got her own online way of selling stuff now. She's been approached to be the ambassador of an online jewelry. So she doesn't have to create this stuff herself. People approach her and give her a percentage of the sales of just using her as the name brand for their jewelry line. All right, as I mentioned early on, this can work in any sort of hobby or any sort of interest you have. Let me show you just some of the examples of books we've published and the success these people have had. Sailing to Win, Dinghies and Wonders On. I don't even know what that is, but Brett's done incredibly well with this book, which is his hobby, basically. Music Teaching Made Profitable. These guys have done exceptionally well from this book. So they've taken their hobby, their interest, and made it profitable because of a book, which has positioned them amongst other music teachers or elevated them above other music teachers, okay? Winning Horsemanship. This book actually ended up in the hands of many A-grade celebrities. It was actually included in the show bag that's given out to people in the Oscars. Done incredibly well for her, made her stand out in that industry. Beat PTSD. This guy was literally on the verge of suicide. He was suffering that much from it. By writing the book, it's become a cathartic exercise that's helped heal him. But of course, the book itself has gone on to help so many others. So this guy's been gone from the lowest point of his life to now being highly sought after, does a lot of work with RSLs, travels to help people and talk about PTSD, and is a major player in that space, both here and overseas. The Ride of Her Life, Lara Andon. Believe it or not, this is a high school teacher who wanted to become a model. She even had her own agent, but she just wasn't getting anywhere, okay? A very competitive space. By writing a book about what she enjoyed doing, surfing, she's created a book, and that book has elevated her. That book has made her stand out. That book has got her media and PR attention that she couldn't have otherwise got, and that has led to modeling. She has been an incredibly successful model, and she's been an ambassador to various charities and organizations and events. And she was even, I think it was Channel 9, ended up taking her on to do her own lifestyle adventure program, and they paid her $1 million a year to do that. Dealing with autism. This is the classic example of people saying, well, I'm not an expert, I can't write a book. Yeah, you've got some experience, and I want you to write about your experience. So this lady has a child with autism that she's had to raise, and that makes her an expert. She has got an experience that others don't. She literally shares the stage with people who have double bloody degrees, double doctorates, you know, they're PhDs, they've got all this experience. She goes, well, how can I share a stage with them? Because they have all the theoretical or scientific knowledge. She has the real knowledge. She's able to relate and convey things to people in a very real way. That's what her book's done, and it's elevated her status and really has made her be perceived as the expert in that field. Suzanne, another classic example, drug-free pain relief. She's written about her experiences with that, and the opportunities this has created for her are absolutely staggering. She's traveled the world, and she has had a chance to interview or work on stage with some of the most amazing and big-name people you know. The one that stands out for me is Mel Gibson. I've seen many pictures of her on stage talking with Mel Gibson about this in front of large crowds. Tracy Stranger, How to Overcome Stress Naturally. Tracy was one of our very first authors back 15 years ago. She actually had the Dalai Lama write the foreword to her book. We have a way of teaching people how to get access to people like that and get them to write the foreword for your book. And so when the Dalai Lama came to Australia, they caught up with her, they met, and he was so impressed with it all. He actually had her travel around Australia with him. So everywhere he went to speak, Tracy went with him and was selling copies of her book. Another classic example is Liz Dunoon, helping children with dyslexia. She actually had Richard Branson write the foreword to her book. I don't know if you know, but he is dyslexic, so he was the ideal person to write the foreword for this book. And we showed her how that was to be done. She has raised 2 children with dyslexia. She's created products to help others with children with dyslexia. But that business wasn't doing anything. She couldn't get the attention. She couldn't get noticed. if you've created your own book, if you now stand out amongst everyone else that's trying to do this, if people read that and build that bond, that trust, that the credibility that comes from it, can you see how you're going to make a lot more business? And so she's now selling her products all around the world as a result of that book. Obviously, having Richard Branson write the foreword has given her opportunities to far more free media or PR than she would have probably otherwise got. One of my favorites, Jacqueline Coates, love this lady, was a corporate woman who gave it all away to teach art. That's her passion. She loves teaching art. Do you think there's other people out there teaching art from home? Yep. So Jacqueline's written this incredible book. It has elevated her amongst all others. It tells everything about her that you want to know. You're definitely going to build this bond and this connection with her. You're going to understand her passion, and you're going to want to be part of it. And so you can do online courses, or you can pay more and do courses in person with her. And she now does courses all around Australia, throughout New York, London, Paris, places south of France, all sorts of places like that. So she's taken her hobby and been able to turn that into a 7-figure business just from having a book. Gay has done no more tears colic relief. Gay owns a couple of pharmacies. She created a formula to help children with colic. Now, that alone should be newsworthy. Any parent that's ever had a kid with colic would love to know about this. The fact that she came up with the relief for it hasn't made it into the news. So she was only selling one of those formulas a day on average, all right? She's created the book, and the book has obviously gone worldwide. It's an amazing topic, and she's talking about it and talking about her formula. And as a result, she now sells over 700 of that formula a day as opposed to one a day, all right? The sales have been phenomenal. Now, there's a shelf life of it. It's not long, a couple of weeks or something. So what's happened? It's not available overseas. We've actually had celebrities and people with very high net incomes. They'll actually fly a business jet over just to pick up cases of her formula to fly it back to the States, okay? That's only come about because of her book. Katrina Wilson, I love this example, rugby mindset. Now, it doesn't actually have anything to do with rugby. And why I've included this example is because this is probably the quintessential version of you already have the content for a book in your mind. Katrina was working in a job, and she was getting paid $60,000 a year, and she could see things that needed to be done better, or she had ways of doing things better. And if she brought them up to her boss, she was belittled for it. She was told that, that wasn't necessary. And she only earning $60,000 a year. She should learn her place. She actually felt harassed in the workplace. She couldn't make any success. All she's done is she's gone and put the ideas that she already had, the ideas that she's already verbalized to her bosses, she just went and put that in a book. Now, she doesn't have a PhD. She doesn't have a university degree, but her book is now being studied by academia. That book has elevated her status completely. She no longer works for that company. She consults to that company and many others. She's earning over $300,000 a year with exactly the same knowledge she had when she was earning $60,000 a year. The difference is she's now put it in a book. And as I said, other universities are now studying this book, teaching it to the upcoming CEOs and leaders of the future, and starting to create thesis and other conversations and discussions around the content of her book. That is what is possible, people. A book can provide so many opportunities that you never saw coming. This is one thing we have authors come back to us time and time and time again. Hey, did you know I can do this now? These people have approached me. I never saw this coming. Joe Munro, as I said to you, the savvy shopaholic, ended up getting an entire jewelry line named after her. You just don't understand all the opportunities that can come to you from having a book. So regardless of what subject you decide to write about, what your book will get you that many people don't realize, it'll actually get you access to other influencers. Imagine how quickly that will grow your business. Your ideal clients. It gets you the perfect way to share your message, build your brand, support a charity if that's what you choose to do. And I've done that, and we've had many authors be very successful with this. It will make a massive difference to many others, all whilst creating your own legacy. You're not going to live forever, but your words can if they're in a book. So let's make sure we understand this bit very clearly, because the majority of people out there only see a book as written information that's easily disseminated, right? A book is just a book in and of itself. And that's how traditional publishers approach it. But through entrepreneurial publishing, if you know what you're doing and you do it right, it is going to develop your personal brand. It is going to elevate you. It's going to make you stand out amongst your competition. It's actually going to position you as the authority or the expert. You're going to have a whole lot of content you can lift out of that for magazines, like I showed you with Karina Francois, or for blog articles or social media or anything like that. You don't have to go and recreate it. If you're driving traffic to your website and you're creating a list, you're building a list of hot buys, people who are ready and willing to buy more from you with anything that comes up in the future. Speaking opportunities. Look, I know a lot of you aren't probably comfortable speaking from stage, but the whole point is if you become a successful author, people, and you're positioned as that expert, people will pay a lot of money to have the experts on their stage. So for what's effectively a 1 or 2 hours work, talking about the topic you're most passionate about anyway, you could make a lot of money. This will generate press and media in a way you won't understand or believe. We've got so many authors who've generated hundreds of thousands of dollars of free press and media and have even said to us afterwards, we would have been prepared to pay for it, but there was no way to get that. There's no way to get that sort of exposure or pay for it without having had the book. Joint ventures, be prepared to have other people approaching you, wanting to do deals with you. It increases your value, increases the value of your brand, builds confidence. Now, this is important. It builds confidence not just in your customer. Your customer is definitely going to have a lot of confidence in buying from you and dealing with you, but it also builds your confidence. Imagine someone like, there's some of the people I've already shown you, some of the confidence that came about from them putting their ideas into a book and getting the book out there and seeing the success that comes from that, the positive feedback that comes from people saying, thank goodness you've done that. I really want to know more. All right. When it builds your confidence, then you find yourself more successful in business. And when you're more successful in business, you become more confident and it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy. Opens doors you never saw coming, leverages your time better than any other tool I've ever come across, and builds wealth. So let's look at the process very quickly. This is how people think it happens. You write this manuscript, you send it to a publisher who's so grateful to have it. They'll produce your book. They send it to the distributors who send it to the bookstores and the end customer reads it. Or these days, people go online, they order it online, or they purchase the ebook version of your book. Right, in a perfect world, that's how it works. But of course, publishers receive so many more manuscripts than they can ever complete, and there's a high risk to them in doing it. So they turn down far more, well in excess of 90% of all manuscripts that are sent to them. And of those that get to them, very few are even successful, okay? It's a risky business the whole way around. Traditional publishing, as a result, only want well-known or established or proven authors. That's how they minimize their risk. What most people don't realize is they have all of the say in your design, all of it. They decide how the cover's going to look, what colors they're going to choose, what font, what style, how many pages, the quality of the paper, the price of the book, everything. You cannot advertise or market in your book, all right? I showed you that book before about making money from art with Jacqueline Coates. Believe it or not, she actually had a publishing deal with Penguin Publishers. But when she saw our model and she realized the money that could be made on the front end and the back end, and she wasn't allowed to do that in a traditional published book, she decided not to go with Penguin. If you're going to run your own events, which is big for those of us in business, you want to sell your own book or give your book away at events, you have to buy it back from the traditional publisher at 50% of the retail rate. This slide is out of date. It says here they take 12 to 18 months to bring your book to market. I've had several authors approaching me who are ready to switch over to us because one of them is completely despises their publisher. They've had an absolute gutful with them. The other one, she absolutely loves her publisher. She said there's nothing wrong with them. She likes dealing with them. But in each case, all these people are saying to me, they cannot get a book published in less than 2 years. That's what it's taking now to get your book to market. If your message is so pressing, you want to get it out there and you want to build your business now, do you really want to be waiting 2 years for your book to get into the marketplace? As I said earlier, you only get a small percentage of the cover price, so you don't make a whole lot of money. And they handle the distribution and bookstore orders and sales. So that's the positive from traditional publishing. But I'll put a caveat on that. First and foremost, they probably won't do your marketing. So you've still got to market your own book. Most people don't realize that with a traditional publisher. You're still expected to market your book. And where it says there they handle all distribution, there's no guarantee of a distribution agreement anymore with traditional publishers. To try and compete with a lot of the charlatans out there, what they're doing now is they're saying, well, we'll run a course, you pay us for that course. And now that you've done the course, if you want your book proofread, you pay us for that. And then if you want your book printed, you pay us for that. But there's no guarantee of distribution with that. And that's disturbing, because that's why you should be going through a publisher, is to get that distribution and into bookstores and other outlets. And I'll talk about that shortly. So as a result of those difficulties, a lot of people went in to try self-publishing. Obviously, the quality of books that you can do with self-publishing these days are very good. You'll make a lot more money per book. A lot more. You know, just whatever the cost of the book is, subtract that from what you're selling it for, and that's your profit. It gives you more flexibility to sell your book into other markets, but you won't get it into bookstores. You can get to the printers much sooner. 16 weeks. You can probably do it shorter than 16 weeks as opposed to 2 years. You get complete control over everything, how it looks, colors, all the rest of it. And of course, you can market and advertise in your own book. And this is why I think it really became so successful, why so many people tried to do it, because they could market and advertise in their own book, which traditional publishers wouldn't let them do it. However, you do have to design, proofread, lay out, and print your book to international publishing standards. You have to arrange the correct barcodes, ISBN numbers. You have to know where to get them, how to pay for them, how to include them, where they're supposed to go. You do have to register with national libraries and lodge a sample book. You have to request international library cataloguing numbers. You have to hold and warehouse all your stock. You have to package, ship, and deliver to your resellers weekly. And you have to find a book distributor. You do have to get your book into other markets. But here's the problem. Distributors won't deal with self-publishers. You think about it. If there's hundreds of thousands of self-publishers out there, why would a distributor want to be dealing with all those? It's much easier for distributors just to be dealing with publishing houses. If you're self-publishing, you have to find bookstores to buy your books. If you're local, you might, okay? Your local bookstore might to support you because you're local, but you're never going to get it into the rest of the state or the rest of the nation. Distributors won't deal with you unless you're a publisher. Bookstores don't want to deal with individual authors, but the bookstores only deal with distributors or major publishers. And believe it or not, there's some snobbery out there. You may not know it. If you've produced your own self-published book and you and your mum have told you how wonderful it is, you probably don't like to hear this, but it's very obvious to those bibliophiles or those of us in the industry when a book has been self-published. There's a whole lot of things missing or haven't been done correctly. And so a lot of book buyers don't like self-published books for that reason. So what you'll need is an entrepreneurial publisher. And what Global Publishing Group did, and that's how it got established 16 years ago, was it looked at the traditional publishing model, and it took the best parts of that, but got rid of all of the rest of it, which was just nonsense. It took the best of self-publishing, but got rid of all of the limitations, and it's added distribution, both national and international. We can get you into over 20,000 outlets nationally and over 50,000 outlets internationally. So that's getting you into bookstores, online platforms, sales of physical books, as well as ebooks. We make it far easier and far more profitable for authors. And how do I know? Because over the last 15 years, we have literally helped thousands of people. We've produced hundreds and hundreds of best-selling books. As I said to you, as a percentage of authors published, we have produced the highest number of best-selling authors in Australia. And we have generated tons of media. Long before online media became a big thing, we generated so much in newsprint, magazines, on national television and radio, online now producing a hell of a lot, as well as still producing it offline. So my question to you from all of this is really, what have you learned, and are you going to put it in place? Because I want you to ask yourself, what would you think? What would it mean to you to walk into a bookstore and see your book on the bookshelf? How would that make you feel? What could that do for your business? This is Conrad Bobolak, I showed you earlier. That's him with some of his awards, his best-selling awards for his 2 books. This is one of the bookstores. His daughter came running out of one day going, Daddy, your book's in the bookstore. So he went in and looked at him. He's positioned between Tony Robbins and Warren Buffett. and directly above Robert Kiyosaki. So that was too good a photo for him not to take. How do you think that made him feel being in there with his daughter and seeing his book? And as I say, that book has allowed him to generate, he's paying himself $1 million a year as a result of the business that book's created. So what I'm offering is, if those of you who want to know more, we do run a special 3-day event. We only run this once, sometimes twice a year. It's a pretty exclusive event. In 3 days, I can show you absolutely everything you need to know to create a best-selling book, a genuine bona fide best-selling book. So we'll work with you on the front and back cover design. Believe it or not, the back cover design is one of the most important elements of the book, and I haven't found anyone else yet who understands it completely and knows how to make that work. We'll help you with the idea. Even if you don't have a business idea, we will help you develop that in there and basically work out the structure for your book, so that when you leave this event, you'll have all of the elements you need to make a best-selling book. You've just got to spend that 3 hours talking into Microsoft Word or otter.ai, as I said. Seats are strictly limited. This is not a marketing ploy. We keep this specifically small. This is a workshop. We're going to workshop with you in small groups and individual one-on-one. So we have to do it this way. We have a limited number of seats because we've got to have, the team's got to be able to work with the number of people in the room. And this is being held at VOCO, V-O-C-O, beautiful hotel in the city of Brisbane CBD, 15th to the 17th of March, 85 North Quay, Brisbane CBD. As I said, that's VOCO. This is a great opportunity for those of you who are serious about getting ahead and getting this tool built in the shortest time possible.